The porcelain cup hit the saucer with a sound like a small bone breaking. Charlotte Ashford, Duchess of Ravenscourt, looked up from the butter she had been spreading across her toast and watched her sister's hand tremble against the white china. Arabella's face had gone pale, but her voice when she spoke was steady. Too steady, Charlotte thought, the kind of steady that comes from rehearsal. "I'm carrying his child," Arabella said. And she looked at Charlotte, not at Marcus. The breakfast room went silent, except for the sound of 3-year-old Arthur arranging his toast soldiers in a careful line across his plate, humming a tuneless melody that belonged only to him. Charlotte's knife stopped moving. Her breathing changed, shallow, rapid, the way it had changed in her father's surgery when a patient presented with symptoms that meant something terrible. But her hands remained steady, because she was a physician's daughter, trained for crisis. And steadiness was the first lesson her father had taught her. Marcus spoke first. "What?" Arabella's gaze remained fixed on Charlotte. "March 14th. Your study. After 1 in the morning." Charlotte watched her husband's face. She had learned to read faces the way her father read pulses, quickly, accurately, cataloging every micro-expression for diagnosis. What she saw on Marcus's face now was shock, not guilt, not the careful blankness of a man who had been caught. Shock. The face of a man who did not understand what was happening. She had seen that face in her father's surgery 100 times. The family member who had just heard the diagnosis and could not process it, whose world had just shifted on its axis and who stood frozen in the moment before comprehension arrived. She should trust that face. She wanted to trust it. But her mother had trusted a world that punished her for it. And Charlotte had spent 26 years learning that the world did not forgive women who trusted unwisely. The words came out before she could stop them. "So am I." The room stopped. Marcus's eyes went to her belly. Arabella's hand froze on her cup. Arthur looked up from his toast, his small face curious. "So am I," Charlotte repeated, louder now. 6 weeks. She had planned to tell him tonight, over dinner, with candles and wine she would not drink, and the kind of quiet joy she had been carrying in her chest like a secret treasure. Instead, she was telling him here at this table, across from her sister's claim, in a room that smelled of coffee and betrayal. Marcus reached for her hand. She pulled it back. Not cruelty, survival. She could not be touched right now, or she would collapse. And she would not collapse in front of Arabella, who sat across from her with that rehearsed steadiness and a claim that had just detonated Charlotte's world. Charlotte stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. "Arthur, finish your toast." The boy looked at her with wide eyes. "Mama?" "Finish your toast, darling. Papa will help you." She turned to Marcus. "I am moving to the guest bedroom. I will not leave this house. This is my house. But I need 12 feet of corridor between us until I understand what happened in your study on March 14th. Marcus rose. "Charlotte, 12 feet, she said. "That is what I need. Can you give me that?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Yes." She walked out. The corridor was cool and empty. She placed both palms flat against the wall, pressing hard, grounding herself in the solid reality of stone and plaster. She counted her heartbeat. 94. Too fast. She was a physician's daughter. She knew what 94 meant. Fear, shock, the body preparing for crisis. She went to the guest bedroom. It was a room she had never slept in, a room kept ready for visitors who rarely came. The bed was made with crisp linens. The washstand held a pitcher of water. The window looked out over the garden where she had planted herbs last spring: camphor, sage, lavender. A physician's garden in a duke's grounds. Marcus had teased her about it. "Are you planning to diagnose the roses?" he had asked, and she had laughed and kissed him and told him that some habits were too deeply rooted to abandon. She locked the door, opened her father's medical case, the one she had brought with her when she married, the one Marcos had smiled at and never questioned. Inside, notebook, pencil, her father's magnifying glass, the small brass ruler he used for measuring wounds. She sat at the writing desk, opened the notebook, wrote in her father's precise hand, March 14th. Arabella claims intimacy with MM's face, shock consistent with genuine surprise. Arabella's delivery, rehearsed, pauses measured, phrases constructed. Query: who rehearses a confession? She would investigate, not because she didn't trust him, because the world that had told her she didn't belong, the world that had whispered about the physician's daughter who married a duke, who corrected his Latin at dinner parties, who smelled of camphor instead of perfume, had just presented its evidence. And the only way to defeat that verdict was to dismantle it with the tools her father had given her. She heard footsteps in the corridor, a knock at the door. "Charlotte." Marcus's voice, steady, careful. "Please let me explain." She stood, walked to the door, but did not open it. "Explain the 10 minutes before Mrs. Palliser arrived." A pause. Then, "She was feverish. I held her upright, called for Palliser. That is all that happened." "Why didn't you tell me?" "She asked me not to worry you." Charlotte closed her eyes. "A frightened girl asked you to keep a secret from your wife, and you agreed because solving things alone is what you do. That is the problem, Marcus. Not what happened in your study. What happens in your head when you decide I don't need to know?" "Charlotte, 12 feet, she said. "I told you what I need." She heard him exhale, then the sound of his footsteps retreating down the corridor. She returned to the desk. Added to her notes, M admits Arabella was present, admits he kept it from me, claims fever, nothing more. Mrs. Palliser will confirm or deny. She would begin with Mrs. Palliser. The housekeeper kept a logbook, every incident, every late-night disturbance, every call for assistance, recorded in her neat, methodical hand. If Marcus had called her at 1:15 on March 14th, it would be there. Charlotte looked down at her belly, still flat, still secret. She placed her palm over it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is not how I wanted to tell him." But the child growing inside her could not hear apologies. The child only knew the rhythm of her heartbeat, which was still too fast, and the tension in her body, which would not ease until she understood what had happened in her husband's study 16 weeks ago. She opened the notebook again. Wrote, "Timeline critical. Medical examination will confirm or refute dates. Father must examine Arabella. Her father, Dr. Henry Lidgate, the man who had taught her to read symptoms, to catalog evidence, to trust methodology over emotion. The man who had delivered half the county and never once failed to record the dates. She would write to him tonight. Ask him to come to Ravenscourt. Arabella would submit to examination. Charlotte would insist on it. And if the dates did not align, if the medical evidence contradicted her sister's claim, then Charlotte would know. Not that Marcus was innocent. She already believed that, despite the evidence, despite the rehearsed words at breakfast. She believed it because she knew his face, and the expression she had witnessed this morning belonged to a man blindsided by accusation, not cornered by truth. But she needed to know who had built the lie. And why? Charlotte spent the afternoon in the guest bedroom, writing. Not letters, observations. She had learned this method from her father. When the diagnosis was unclear, write everything down. Every symptom, every inconsistency, every detail that did not fit the expected pattern. Arabella's behavior at breakfast, rehearsed. The pauses between phrases were too measured. The way she had set down her cup before speaking, theatrical. The way she had looked at Charlotte, not at Marcus, designed for maximum impact. Who rehearses a confession? Someone who has been coached. Marcus's behavior, consistent with genuine shock. His hand had reached for his coffee cup and missed. His voice had risen half an octave on the word, "what?" These were not the reactions of a man who had been expecting the accusation. But he had admitted Arabella was in his study that night. He had admitted he kept it from Charlotte. That part was true. The question was, what else was true? A knock at the door. Not Marcus this time. A lighter touch. "Your Grace?" Mrs. Palliser's voice. "I've brought tea." Charlotte unlocked the door. The housekeeper stood in the corridor with a tray. Tea, bread, butter, a small pot of honey. Mrs. Palliser was 53, gray-haired, unflappable. She had been at Ravenscourt for 20 years. She had served Marcus's first wife, had been present when Lady Catherine died, had held Arthur as a newborn when Marcus could not bear to touch him. "Thank you, Mrs. Palliser." Charlotte took the tray. "May I ask you something?" "Of course, Your Grace." "Do you keep a logbook?" Mrs. Palliser's expression did not change. "I do. Every household incident. His Grace's father insisted on it." "May I see the entry for March 14th? The housekeeper hesitated. Then she nodded. "I'll bring it to you." She returned 10 minutes later with a leather-bound book, opened it to the correct page, pointed to an entry written in her neat, slanted hand. March 14th, 1:15 a.m. His Grace called for assistance. Miss Lidgate, feverish in the study, moved her to the sitting room, brought tea and blankets. Fever broke at 1:35 a.m. Miss Lidgate escorted to guest bedroom by housemaid Jennings. His Grace returned to his chambers at 1:45 a.m. Charlotte read it twice. "Nothing else occurred?" "Nothing else, Your Grace." "And you would have recorded it if it had?" Mrs. Palliser met her eyes. "I record everything. It is my job." Charlotte handed the book back. "Thank you." The housekeeper paused at the door. "Your Grace, if I may." She nodded. "Yes? His Grace is a good man. Whatever you believe happened, I hope you will remember that." Charlotte nodded. Mrs. Palliser left, closing the door softly behind her. Charlotte returned to her notebook. Added, "Mrs. Palliser's logbook confirms fever incident. Duration, 30 minutes. No indication of intimacy." M returned to his own chambers. The evidence was accumulating. But it was not yet enough. She needed her father. She needed medical confirmation of the dates. She wrote the letter by candlelight. Her father would understand. He always understood. Marcus did not come to her door again that day. But at dinner, a tray arrived with food she had not requested. Roasted chicken, potatoes, the ginger tea she had been drinking every morning for the past 2 weeks. The ginger helped with the nausea. He knew. He had been watching. She ate the chicken, drank the tea, felt the child inside her, too small yet to move, but present. Real. She placed her hand over her belly again. "Your father is a good man," she whispered. "I believe that. I just need to prove it." At 8 o'clock, she heard Arthur crying in the nursery. She stood, opened her door, moved down the corridor toward the sound. Marcus was already there, holding the boy, murmuring soft words Charlotte could not quite hear. She stopped in the doorway. Marcus looked up. Their eyes met. He had a nightmare, Marcus said, about the breakfast room. Charlotte's chest tightened. What did he dream? That you left. That you didn't come back. She crossed the room, took Arthur from Marcus's arms. The boy wrapped his small arms around her neck and buried his face in her shoulder. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not leaving. This is my house, Arthur. Do you understand? My house. Mama's house, Arthur repeated, his voice muffled. That's right. She held him until he fell asleep. Then she laid him gently in his bed, pulled the blanket up to his chin, kissed his forehead. When she turned, Marcus was still standing there, watching. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For staying. She looked at him. I told you I wouldn't leave. I meant it. I know. But thank you anyway. She walked past him, back to the guest bedroom, back to the 12 feet of corridor she had demanded. But before she closed the door, she turned. Marcus? He paused. Yes, I do believe you. About what happened. I just need to understand why Arabella would lie. He nodded. So do I. She closed the door, locked it, returned to her notebook. But she did not write. She sat in the chair by the window and looked out at the garden where her herbs grew in neat rows. And she thought about the breakfast room, and the porcelain cup hitting the saucer, and the sound of her sister's voice saying words someone had taught her to say. Who rehearses a confession? Someone who has been coached. The question was, by whom? Dr. Henry Lidgate arrived at Ravenscourt 3 days later. He came in his old traveling coach, the same coach that had carried Charlotte to her wedding 14 months ago, the same coach that had carried her mother's body to the churchyard 20 years before that. Charlotte met him in the entrance hall. He was 62, gray-haired, lean from a lifetime of walking between patients' homes. He carried his medical bag in one hand and his hat in the other. Charlotte. He kissed her cheek. Tell me what you need. She told him. Everything. Arabella's claim, Marcus's denial, the logbook, the timeline, the question she could not answer. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he set down his bag and took both her hands in his. You want me to examine your sister? She nodded. Yes. And if the dates do not align, then I will know she is lying, and I will find out who told her to lie. He studied her face. You are afraid. Yes. Of what? That I was right all along. That I don't belong here. That this world will eventually reject me the way it rejected Mama. Her father's grip tightened. Your mother belonged everywhere she went because she chose to belong. The world's opinion did not change that. Do you understand? Charlotte's throat tightened. I'm trying to. Then try harder. Because right now you are investigating your husband as though he is a patient presenting symptoms. That is good. That is what I taught you. But do not forget to investigate your fear. Fear is a symptom too. And it lies more convincingly than any patient I have ever treated. He released her hands, picked up his bag. Where is Arabella? In the drawing room. Then let us go. Arabella sat by the window, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up when Charlotte and their father entered. Her face went pale. Papa. Arabella. Dr. Lidgate set down his bag. Your sister has asked me to examine you. Do you consent? Arabella looked at Charlotte. Do I have a choice? Yes, Charlotte said. You always have a choice. But if you refuse, I will assume you are lying, and I will act accordingly. Arabella's hands tightened in her lap. Then she nodded. I consent. The examination took 20 minutes. Charlotte stood by the door, watching her father work with the same methodical precision he had taught her. He asked questions, measured, calculated. When he finished, he helped Arabella sit up. Then he turned to Charlotte. 11 weeks. Charlotte's heart stopped. You're certain? I am certain. She did the calculation in her head. March 14th was 16 weeks ago. The dates are impossible, she said. He nodded. Yes. Arabella's face crumpled. She pressed both hands to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Charlotte crossed the room, knelt beside her sister. Who is the father, Arabella? Arabella shook her head. Tears streamed down her face. Who told you to say it was Marcus? Still nothing. Charlotte took her sister's hands, pulled them away from her mouth. I am not asking as a duchess. I am asking as your sister. Who told you to say this? Arabella's voice came out as a whisper. Philip. Charlotte went still. Philip who? Lord Kendall. The name hit Charlotte like a fist to the chest. Lord Philip Kendall, Viscount, Marcus's political rival, the man who held the casting vote on the Canal Commission, the man who had visited Ravenscourt twice in the past month, always charming, always solicitous, always watching. Kendall told you to accuse Marcus? Arabella nodded. He said if I did it publicly, Marcus would be forced to provide for me and the child. He said Marcus would settle money on me to avoid scandal, and then Philip would marry me afterward. And you believed him? I was terrified. Arabella's voice broke. I'm 20 years old, Charlotte. I'm pregnant. I have no money, no prospects. Philip was kind to me. He courted me for 3 months. I thought he loved me. And then, when I told him about the baby, he said this was the only way. Charlotte stood. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her sides. Did you rehearse the words? She nodded. Yes. Did he tell you which night to reference? Yes. He knew about the fever. He knew I had been in Marcus's study. He said it would make the story believable. Charlotte turned to her father. He was watching her with steady eyes. What do you need? He asked. I need to think. She left the drawing room, walked down the corridor, kept walking until she reached the garden, where her herbs grew in neat rows and the air smelled of sage and lavender instead of lies. She knelt in the dirt, pressed her hands into the soil, let the earth ground her. Marcus had not betrayed her. She had known that. But now she knew why Arabella had lied, and she knew who had built the lie. Lord Philip Kendall, the man who had smiled at her across the drawing room, the man who had called her Your Grace, with just enough emphasis to make it sound like a question. The man who had destroyed her marriage to protect a canal investment. She would destroy him for it. But first, she needed to decide. Did she confront him with documents? Or did she trust Arabella to speak? Charlotte returned to the guest bedroom. Her father was waiting in the corridor. You have a plan, he said. She nodded. Yes. What is it? I'm going to make Arabella tell the truth, publicly, in front of witnesses. Her father studied her. That is a risk. She may not have the courage. I know. And if she fails, then I will have lost my sister twice, once to Kendall's lie and once to her own fear. Her father nodded slowly. Your mother would be proud of you. Charlotte's throat tightened. Why? Because you are not asking the world to believe you. You are asking your sister to save herself. That is the harder choice, and the braver one. He kissed her forehead, left. Charlotte entered the guest bedroom, sat at the desk, opened her notebook, wrote, Kendall is the architect. Arabella is the weapon. The question is, can the weapon turn? She would find out. Lord Philip Kendall came to Ravenscourt 4 days later. He arrived unannounced, as was his habit, and asked to see the Duchess. Charlotte received him in the morning room. He entered with his usual easy charm, his smile bright, his manner solicitous. "Your Grace, I heard about the distressing situation with your sister. I came to offer my support." Charlotte gestured to a chair. "How kind of you." He sat. She remained standing. "Tell me, Lord Kendall, when did you first learn of my sister's condition?" His smile did not waver. "I believe she mentioned it at a gathering last month. I was concerned, of course. A young woman in such circumstances, it is always tragic." "And when did you learn she intended to claim the child was my husband's?" Now the smile faltered. "Just slightly. Just enough." "I'm not sure I understand the question, Your Grace." Charlotte took a step closer. She had learned this from her father. When a patient is lying, reduce the distance. Make them feel the pressure of proximity. You understand perfectly. You courted my sister for 3 months. You made her pregnant. And when she told you, you coached her to destroy my marriage. You wrote the words she spoke at breakfast. You told her which night to reference. You staged the entire performance. Kendall stood. "This is absurd." "Is it? My father examined Arabella 3 days ago. She is 11 weeks pregnant. The night she referenced was 16 weeks ago. The dates are medically impossible. And my sister has told me everything." His face went cold. The charm vanished. What remained was something harder, sharper. "If your sister recants," he said quietly, "no one will provide for her child. She will be ruined, alone, penniless. Is that what you want for her?" "I want her to tell the truth." "The truth is expensive, Your Grace, especially for women. You should know that better than anyone." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Charlotte stood in the empty room. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her sides. She had read him correctly. He was not a man who would retreat. He would pressure Arabella to maintain the lie, which meant Charlotte had to act quickly. She went to the drawing room. Arabella was there, sitting by the window, staring out at nothing. Charlotte sat beside her. "Philip came to see me." Arabella's hands tightened in her lap. "What did he say?" "He said, if you recant, no one will provide for your child." "Then he's right. I have to stay the course." Charlotte shook her head. "No, you have to tell the truth. In front of witnesses, at the village assembly." Arabella's face went white. "I can't." "You can, and I will stand beside you when you do." "Charlotte, listen to me. Philip is telling you that the only man who will provide for your child is the man who used you to destroy your sister. That is a lie. Father will provide for you. I will provide for you. But you have to choose. You have to decide whether you want to save yourself by telling the truth or destroy yourself by maintaining his lie." Arabella's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so afraid." "I know. But you were brave enough to tell me his name. Now you have to be brave enough to say it in front of everyone else." Arabella looked down at their joined hands. "What if I can't? Then I will have lost you, and that will be the worst thing Kendall has taken from me. Not my marriage. You." Arabella closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "When?" "Tomorrow night. The assembly rooms. I'll arrange it." That night, Charlotte went to the nursery. Arthur was asleep. Marcus was sitting in the chair beside the bed, watching their son. Charlotte entered quietly, sat in the chair across from him. "Tomorrow night," she said. Arabella will stand in the assembly rooms and say what Kendall told her to say at our breakfast table. Except this time, she'll say who wrote the words. Marcus looked at her. And if she can't? Then I'll have lost my sister twice. Once to Kendall's lie, and once to her own fear. You're risking everything on her courage. I'm risking everything on the belief that my sister is still in there, somewhere underneath what he built. Marcus reached across the space between them, took her hand. She let him. I should have told you, he said, about the fever, about Arabella being in the study. I thought I was protecting you from worry. Instead, I gave Kendall exactly what he needed. You gave him silence. That was enough. He met her eyes. I'm sorry. She squeezed his hand. I know. Arthur stirred. Mama? I'm here. Papa too? Papa too. The boy settled. Charlotte and Marcus sat in the dim nursery, their hands joined across the space between the chairs, their son sleeping between them. I'm afraid, Charlotte whispered. Of what? That she won't speak. That I'll stand there tomorrow night and she'll look at Kendall and lose her nerve. Marcus lifted her hand, placed it flat against his chest, over his heart. She felt the steady rhythm beneath her palm. 62, he said. Is that good? It means one of us is calm. And me? He placed his hand over hers, felt her pulse. 90. But you'll be steady when it matters. You always are. She leaned forward, rested her forehead against his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her. They stayed that way until Arthur woke at dawn. The village assembly rooms were full. 40 guests, the local gentry, the vicar, Mrs. Palliser, Dr. Lidgate. And at the back, standing with his arms crossed, Lord Philip Kendall. Charlotte stood at the front of the room. Arabella sat beside her, pale and shaking. Marcus stood to Charlotte's left, steady, present. Charlotte looked at Kendall. He met her eyes, smiled slightly, confident. She turned to the room. Thank you for coming. My sister has something to say. Arabella did not move. Charlotte placed a hand on her back, not pushing, steadying. Arabella. Her sister stood. Her hands were trembling so hard she had to clasp them together to keep them still. She looked at Charlotte. Charlotte nodded. Arabella turned to face the room. In January, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, Lord Kendall began courting me. The room went silent. By March, I was carrying his child. He told me that if I accused the Duke of Ravenscourt publicly, the Duke would be forced to provide for me and the child, and Lord Kendall would marry me afterward. He wrote the words I spoke at breakfast. He told me which night to reference. He told me to disorder my hair and crease my dress before leaving the Duke's study so the maid would see. Kendall's face went white. This is hysterical fabrication. Charlotte cut him off. My father, Dr. Lidgate, examined my sister 3 days ago. She is 11 weeks pregnant. The night she references was 16 weeks ago. The dates are medically impossible. She turned to Mrs. Palliser, seated at the side. Mrs. Palliser, were you present on March 14th? The housekeeper stood. Yes, Your Grace. His Grace called me at 1:15. Miss Lidgate was feverish. We moved her to the sitting room. I brought tea. Nothing further occurred. I recorded it in my logbook. Charlotte turned back to Kendall. You coached a 20-year-old girl to destroy her own sister's marriage to protect a canal investment. She is carrying your child, and you are standing in my assembly room. Kendall looked around. No one met his eyes. No one moved to support him. He turned, walked to the door, opened it himself. The room remained silent until his footsteps faded. Then Charlotte turned to Arabella, took her hand. "Sit down." Arabella's legs gave out. She collapsed into the chair. "You should hate me." Charlotte knelt beside her. "I might. Tomorrow. Tonight you told the truth, and that is enough for today." Arabella pressed both hands to her face. Her shoulders shook. Charlotte looked up. Marcus was standing beside her now. His hand rested on her shoulder. She leaned into it, 1 degree. "You brought her here," he said quietly. "She needed to speak, not me, not documents, her. You trusted her to do it. I trusted that my sister, underneath everything Kendall built, was still my sister." He squeezed her shoulder. She reached up, covered his hand with hers. The assembly rooms began to empty. People filed out quietly, murmuring to each other. Dr. Lidgate approached. He looked at Arabella, then at Charlotte. "Take her home," he said. "I'll follow tomorrow." Charlotte nodded. "Thank you, Papa." He kissed her forehead. "You did well." The corridor outside the assembly rooms was empty. Charlotte stood with her back against the wall, her palms flat against the stone. The same posture as the morning she had left the breakfast room. But this time she was not counting her heartbeat. She was waiting. Marcus found her, stood in front of her. "You didn't carry a single document in there," he said. "You carried your sister." "Documents are what my father uses. I used what my mother taught me." "What did your mother teach you?" "That sometimes the bravest thing you can do for someone you love is stand next to them while they tell the truth." He took her face in both hands, kissed her, unhurried, the kiss of a man who had watched his wife trust a sister who betrayed her and win because of it. When they parted, Charlotte whispered, "I'm pregnant." He smiled. "I know." "How?" "You stopped drinking wine. You eat ginger with morning tea. And you placed your hand on your belly during the assembly when you thought no one was watching." "You were watching. I have been watching you for 14 months. I am slow, but I am learning." She took his hand, placed it where hers had been. He held still. She held still. The corridor was empty. The assembly rooms were empty. They were full. 2 weeks later, Charlotte stood in the nursery. Arthur was asleep. Marcus entered quietly. "Arabella has agreed to stay until the child is born," Charlotte said. "My father will attend the delivery." "And Kendall?" His solicitor proposed a settlement. Maintenance for the child. Arabella accepted. Marcus crossed the room, knelt beside her chair. "You stayed in this house. You investigated from the guest bedroom 12 feet from ours. You could have gone to your father's. If I had left, Kendall would have told the county I fled, that I believed it. I stayed because this is my house. I belong in it. You have always belonged in it? I know that now. It took my sister trying to burn it down for me to realize I would fight for it." He took her hand. She squeezed. Arthur stirred. "Mama, I'm here. Papa too? Papa too." The boy settled. Charlotte and Marcus sat in the quiet nursery, their hands joined, their son sleeping between them. "The Canal Commission ruled yesterday," Marcus said. "Kendall's route was rejected." She nodded. "Good." He smiled slightly. "You sound like a duchess." "I am a duchess. A physician's daughter who married a duke and corrected his Latin at dinner parties. That is who I've always been. Just took me a while to believe it." Autumn arrived. The same breakfast room, the same table. Morning light slanting through the windows. Charlotte sat with her hands folded over her belly. 5 months now, visible. Arabella sat across from her, 7 months along, quieter, older than 21 should look. Arthur sat between them, constructing a fort from toast soldiers. Marcus entered, sat, picked up his cup. The Canal Commission ruled yesterday. Kendale's route was rejected. Charlotte placed a jar of Hertfordshire honey beside Arabella's plate, their father's garden, the kind Arabella had loved as a child. Eat. You're managing me. I'm feeding you. Father taught me the difference. Arabella took the honey, spread it on her toast, ate. Marcus watched both sisters across the table that had shattered 4 months ago. Same porcelain, different morning. He caught Charlotte's eye. She raised an eyebrow. What? He lifted his cup, drank. The breakfast room was full.